You know, it's important to understand that the state is under siege, that President William Samoei Ruto is scared to hell. So the only thing he wants to do is to discredit the peaceful protesters.
Yes.
He's trying, is a man who wants to escape accountability of the deaths in the streets. So how is it possible that a few organized criminals can prevent the millions of people from going to the streets? The only one thing that did not exist in the first round of demonstration is a targeted organization against the Goons. Now we know who is sponsoring the Goons. Some politicians that have been sponsoring the Goons of the streets have been mentioned even in the mainstream media. So what we are saying that the next round of demonstrations in the streets will have an organized contingent to deal with the Goons and to protect the innocent demonstrators that are in the street. Because the Constitution of 2010 actually states clearly that the police should be on the streets to protect the peaceful protesters to express their lives. But we have seen before, the police are the ones looting, the police are the ones killing, the police are the ones abducting. So the police alongside the criminals are the same.
Exactly.
So what we are saying that the next round of demonstrations will be organized demonstration to say clearly that we will not stop at the finance bill, but we will make sure that these corrupt people, today, when you look at these leaders, and you, William Samoei Ruto, you have auctioned the Kenyan people. So to that extent, we are saying, if we cannot get leaders that represent the interests of the Kenyan people, then indeed we are leaderless.
Yeah.
When we say the Kenyan people are talking about tribeless, we are not saying that we are not Luos or we are not Kalenjins or we are not Kikuyus. What we are saying that the ruling class, you, President William Samoei Ruto, has used tribes to divide the poor people to dominate them. So we no longer want to actually surrender to tribe and ethnic-based politics that you actually looking forward to use in 2027, to use money, tribes to divide the Kenyan people. Today we say in the streets, we are tribeless because we use tribes to divide us, and not that because we want to surrender our culture. When we say that we are partyless, Mr. President, what we are trying to tell you that the parties that we have entrusted with power in this country has continued to auction our natural resources. The bourgeois political parties have not represented us. When we say we don't want politicians, our demand is that the leaders will emerge from the streets. Our demand is that the political parties that represent the interest of the people are not the people you are meeting in state house. They are the people in the streets fighting along the organized and the unorganized forces. This is the most important that we want to remind you that your time is up. The sooner you start to pack your belongings in state house, the better for you. Because the rage of the people have proven that no military, in fact, you dared the military to come to the streets. On Thursday, the military was on the streets, but the military was welcomed by the joy of the Kenyan people. But the police that you used to kill innocent people was rejected. This is what we continue to say. It's also important to recognize the importance of the Kenyan protest in the African and the global stage. The fight against IMF did not start today. The fight against IMF actually started in 1990s when there was structural adjustment, issues that we had. What did IMF and World Bank do to the Kenyan people today? The first thing the IMF did was to make sure that the Kenyan people live a second-hand life. In fact, everything in our country is second-hand. Our ideas are second-hand. The clothes we put on are second-hand. The vehicles in the streets are second-hand. What it basically means that the IMF, through their local lackeys and the dogs of the West, have actually deindustrialized our processes. They have made sure that the Kikomi was closed. They have made sure that all our textile industry are closed. They have made sure that now President William Samoei Ruto can stand on a national television and tell us that he wants to export us to the West to work as slaves. This is what we are rejecting. So the IMF will be defeated. We have seen that the Kenyan protest has inspired our brothers and sisters in Nigeria, has inspired our brothers and sisters in Uganda. They have inspired our brothers and sisters in South Africa. We want to say that those countries that are fighting against the hegemony of the United States and imperialism, those countries that are fighting against World Bank and IMF, the Kenyan people are willing to form alliances with you, so that when we finally deal with the dictator in William Samoei Ruto, we will join hands to come to your favor to defeat IMF domination.
But in Africa,
finally, the Kenyan people need solidarity. The young people in this country need solidarity. We have seen the president who talks but acts differently. The abductions continues. The killings continues. In the informal settlement from Madari, from Kibera, the killer cops are all over. We have seen a government that for the first time, having failed to convince the military to shoot at its own people, have formed a right-wing militia. From Eldoret to Nairobi to Mombasa, we have seen goons armed with clubs beating people in the streets. This is a criminal we are dealing with, a soulless creature that we must defeat. And we cannot defeat such a kleptocracy by our own hands only. We are calling on the international community, we are calling on brothers and sisters and solidarity from the international square to join forces and defeat the false narratives that is being perpetuated by mainly corporate news in the United States and other Western countries. To come and say that, for example, Ruto is a listening president. We debunk that. We realize that his minions, like Duale, for example, appeared on the national TV talking about that the people who are in the streets are the people who are jealous about Ruto's presidency. These people are just, they are fucked up. They cannot understand that the young people in the streets are in the streets because even if they remain at home, they will die. They don't have food, so they better die with the police than die at home. They are married, they are waking up in the morning, they cannot give their wives dignity, they cannot pay children for the school. So it's better to get out in the streets and continue to fight. This is why today we call the international alliances that are able to support Kenya to tell the truth about the Kenyan people, that the President William Samoei Ruto will not escape the wrath of the people unless we get the dignity for all and not for a few.
power to the people.
First of all, it's important to say that the organized forces and the unorganized forces that were in the streets, that means we have people that have been demonstrating, but the demonstrating in the streets have been rather small. But the tactic of President Ruto's administration was to open negotiations with the opposition for them to surrender and leave the masses of the Kenya with nothing. This is why the people rose to the street. In the essence, we have social justice centers, we have the Communist Party of Kenya, we have the Revolutionary Socialist League. They have been fighting, but for the first time, the main opposition leader has been quiet because they probably expect that the President William Samoei Ruto will drop some